All right, let's get right into it. I want you to picture the inside of an operating room. It's the high-stakes, high-pressure world of neurosurgery. A patient's life is literally in the surgeon's hands, and every single decision they make depends on having the absolute best information as fast as humanly possible. You know, in that room, the clock is more than just a clock. It's a constant pressure. The surgeon is thinking, what kind of tumor am I looking at? Is it aggressive? How much do I need to take out? The answers to those questions change everything, and they need them right then and there, not next week. And that's the huge disconnect, right? You have this urgent, immediate need for an answer, but the reality for decades has been this long, agonizing wait. That gap, that's the problem we're going to break down today. So first up, let's really get into the weeds of the current process. Let's see why getting that final, definitive diagnosis for brain tumor can take so long. Okay, so a tiny tissue sample gets taken during surgery, and from there, it goes on this kind of epic logistical marathon. It gets sent off to pathology, and then it often has to be physically shipped, sometimes clear across the country, to a special genomics lab for a whole bunch of different tests. And here's where the timeline gets pretty shocking. The average time to get that final comprehensive diagnosis back is 33 days. But look at that range. It can stretch out to a staggering 81 days. Just let that sink in for a second. That's almost 3 months of waiting for what might be the most important answer of your entire life. And this isn't just about a delay in a lab report. This has a massive human cost. For the doctors, it means critical treatment decisions are just on hold. And for patients and their families, it's just weeks and weeks of this unbearable anxiety, wondering what's going on, all while the disease could be progressing. But what if you could just collapse that timeline? What if the answer could be delivered not in weeks, but right there, during the operation itself? Well, a new technology is finally making that a reality. I mean, just look at the difference. The old way, tons of different tests, a wait that goes on for weeks, and shipping samples all over the place. The new way, with a tool they call Robin, it's just one single test. The answers come back in hours, and the analysis can happen right there, at the hospital, at the bedside. So what is Robin? Well, the name stands for Rapid Nanopore Brain Intraoperative Classification. The game-changing part is nanopore sequencing. Basically, you're taking a single strand of DNA and feeding it through a microscopic hole, a nanopore, and you're reading its unique signature as it passes through. It lets you decode the tumor's blueprint with incredible speed. So how does it actually work? How can it possibly figure out a tumor's identity that fast? Well, it all comes down to reading something that acts like a unique biological fingerprint. The secret sauce here is something called DNA methylation. Think of it like this. Your DNA has these tiny little chemical tags stuck to it that act like on or off switches for your genes. And it turns out the pattern of those tags is totally unique for different types of cells, including every specific type of brain tumor. It's literally a fingerprint, and this nanopore sequencing can read it directly. And the workflow itself is just incredibly slick. A fresh tissue sample comes straight out of the operating room. In about 90 minutes, the DNA is extracted. It gets loaded onto the nanopore sequencer, which starts spitting out data almost instantly, and boom, you get a classification in real time on a computer screen. Let's just put that in perspective. A complex, multi-step process that took an average of 33 days can now give you a really solid initial diagnosis in less than 2 hours. That's not just an improvement. That's a complete revolution. Okay, so it's ridiculously fast. We get it. But you're probably asking the most important question, is it accurate? Because speed doesn't mean a thing if the answer's wrong. So how does this new kid on the block stack up against the current time-tested gold standard? The key number from the study is this one, 90%. What that 90% means is concordance, or simply put, agreement. In a study with 50 different patients, the rapid diagnosis Robin made in the operating room matched the final weeks-long diagnosis 90% of the time. As you can see here, there's this overwhelming alignment. So yeah, it's not just fast, it's also incredibly reliable. So we've got a technology that's both fast and accurate. Let's bring this all the way back around to what actually matters the most. What does this breakthrough really mean for the people at the center of this story, the patients? This quote from the study, man, it just stops you in your tracks. A child has brain surgery, but the surgeons don't have that final diagnosis yet, so they're a bit more conservative. 19 days later, The final tests come back, and they realize they need to go back in. The child had to have a second brain surgery. With Robin, they could have known that during the very first operation, possibly preventing that second procedure altogether.
And here's another case. A patient's initial results hinted at a really serious type of tumor. But weeks later, the final, more detailed diagnosis came back and showed it was actually a much less severe tumor, one that's often cured by surgery alone. Just imagine the weeks of sheer terror and distress that person went through waiting for an answer that could have been delivered in just a few hours.
So when you add it all up, the future this technology is pointing towards is just better in every way. It means doctors can make faster, more confident treatment decisions. It means way less anxiety for patients, a lower risk of needing repeat surgeries. And this is huge because the gear is smaller and more accessible. It can bring this top-tier diagnostic power to hospitals everywhere, not just a handful of major research centers. In the end, even though we've focused on brain tumors, this is so much bigger than just one disease. This represents a fundamental shift in how we get critical medical information. So the question we're left with is this: if a diagnosis this complicated can happen at the bedside in just a couple of hours, what else is about to be completely revolutionized? That's the question that could change everything.